Call the Wednesday, October 18th, 2017 meeting of the Williamsburg, Virginia Planning Commission to order. Ms. Scott, will you take the roll?
Mr. Granger.
Present.
Mr. Schaller.
Present.
Here. Sorry.
Mr. Klee.
Here.
Stafford.
Here.
Ms. Beth. Here. Mr. Julian.
All right. And we have a new individual on planning staff. Did you want to introduce her, Carolyn?
Yes, we have Allison Fitcham, who is our new zoning administrator with the city. She's been with us 2 weeks now. We want to welcome her. She hails from Louisa County to Williamsburg, and she's replacing Rod Rhodes, who was our previous zoning administrator.
Nice to have you here.
Welcome.
Welcome. All right. First item on the agenda then is the approval of the September 20th, 2017 minutes. Anybody have any modifications or adjustments to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Scott?
Mr. Granger.
Aye.
Mr. Schaller.
Aye.
Mr. Klee.
Aye.
Stafford.
Aye.
Ms. Macbeth.
Aye. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda items. We have one consent agenda item, the Firestone Auto Care Site Plan and Subdivision, SPR 17-010. Does anybody want to remove this from the consent agenda and discuss it? All right, hearing none, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second that motion.
Mr. Granger.
Aye.
Schaller.
Aye.
Mr. Klee.
Aye.
Stafford.
Aye.
Beth. Aye.
All right, we're going to take the public hearings a little bit out of order, so we're going to start with PCR number 17-022.
Chair Stafford and members of Planning Commission, this is an application to extinguish the interior lot lines for the remaining 37 undeveloped residential townhouse lots in High Street as shown in blue on the screen. This area is bound by Traburn Drive on the west, Sterling Manor Drive on the north, Middle Street on the east, and Kings Manor Drive on the south. High Street is designated as economic development land use in the 2013 Comprehensive Plan. These properties are zoned ED2 Economic Development District. High Street was rezoned in 2005 from ED to ED2, and a site plan was approved by Planning Commission for retail, restaurant, theater, and 574 residential units. Sterling Manor Apartments was constructed in 2007 and contains 191 apartment units. A subdivision plat was approved and recorded in 2007 for 53 townhouse lots. Since that time, 16 townhouse lots were constructed and are currently being rented. This year, High Street was sold to 3 separate entities. The commercial portion sold in August to High Street Shops LLC, Sterling Manor Apartments, which contains the 191 apartment units, and the 16 constructed townhouse lots sold to CCC Sterling Manor DE LLC in September, with the remaining undeveloped lots, including the 37 townhouse lots and 150 and 152 Kings Manor Drive, was sold to HS Apartment Land LC in July. The owner is seeking approval to extinguish the interior lot lines of the 37 townhouse lots to create 4 new lots for an apartment development. Staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend the City Council approval of the extinguishment of the interior lot lines of 37 townhouse lots as shown on the preliminary subdivision plat. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions?
I just had 2 questions. One is, what's the new total number of units compared to the old number of units?
That's not determined yet. They will have to come in with a site plan that the Planning Commission will have to approve with the layout and the numbers and the landscaping and other requirements.
Do we have an estimate of what they could do by right?
Well, they've got 574 by right for High Street. You take away the 191 and the 16, and that's how many units are left for the rest of the development.
That's great.
So it'd be for these lots and the 2 larger lots you see across the street. there.
591 is simply what they're allowed for this parcel based on density requirements.
574 was the amount that was allowed with density with the ED
Okay.
district when High Street was developed as one big unit.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So in essence, there's no change in the total number of units on,
That's
it's just a change in the
Style.
The
Style.
type of unit,
Type.
right.
Do we anticipate, maybe that's the way to ask it, a change in, or do we anticipate a request for a higher density here, given that they're going to apartments, or?
Talking to the developer, no, we're not
Okay.
looking at increasing the amount of density
Great,
at this time.
thank you.
Do you have a sense as to who their target consumer is?
Talking to the developer, they're targeting a high-end consumer for this property. He's talking about the units renting more than what the existing Sterling Manor are, with high-end finishes and so forth in the development,
Okay, so not necessarily student housing.
not student housing.
All right, are there any other questions for Ms. Murphy? If not, I'll open the public hearing. So if there's anybody out in the audience who would like to address members of the Planning Commission on this item to extinguish these lot lines, please come forward and state your name and address. All right, seeing no takers, we'll close the public hearing and have a discussion within Planning Commission. Want to start? Well, I saw this at site plan. It made sense to me, just given what they think is the right market for that area. The townhouse lots have been there for a while and haven't moved, and it seems like I'd rather see apartments on that site than empty lots. So I don't have a problem with this extinguishment.
Yeah, I mean, given that still the operative number is 574, I mean, that part's not changing. The idea of having more people there to help the businesses in the front part of the development seems like a reasonable be able to do what they want with apartments versus townhouses.
Yeah, and I think Sterling Apartments, for Sterling Manor, have been
successful,
successful,
yeah.
so I know people who live there and have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think the key, as I kind of implied in my question, is whether this envisions more people on the site beyond what was anticipated, and since that's not the case, I think this seems fine to me. It's really just a question of ownership, owners versus renters, really.
I think particularly the reasons that Sarah and Elaine brought up are also support this. So it's a good idea.
All right, well,
Okay, then I guess I will move that we accept staff recommendation on PCR 17-022.
I second that motion.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Schaller?
Aye.
Mr. Klee?
Aye.
Ms. Stafford?
aye.
Ms. Macbeth?
Aye.
All right, we'll next take up PCR 17-023.
And I'll handle this presentation. In the 2017 General Assembly session, the General Assembly adopted sections 15.2, 2316.3, and 15.2, 2316.4, which essentially makes co-located small cell facilities a use by right in all zoning districts in the state. To explain what a small cell facility is, if you think about a dorm refrigerator, a large dorm refrigerator, with wireless technology in it that is co-located on a building or a utility pole or another structure within the zoning district, along with any of the wires, the power boxes, the meters, the switching boxes, the associated equipment that attaches to this 6 cubic feet box. That's a small cell facility. The code requires this to be a use by right in all zoning districts. However, we are allowed to require an administrative permit. So the staff has an opportunity to review the proposed location of the small cell facility on private property, so we are requesting that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council that they adopt the attached ordinance that you have in front of you, which provides for that administrative review. Really, the only reasons why the staff can turn these down are public safety related issues. So, for example, if it interferes with existing communications equipment for public safety, or if there's plans in place for public safety equipment to go on that building. However, the code does provide that in historic districts, and as that's defined in the code, that would be the AP districts in the city and the CP districts in the city, we are allowed to provide for additional regulations. And so you also have in front of you the proposed ARB guidelines for the districts in which we are allowed to regulate these. And so effectively for the AP and the CP district, in addition to the other review that staff would conduct for these applications, they would also have to go to the Architectural Review Board according to the standards in the ordinance that's in front of you. The ordinance in front of you also contains changes to Chapter 9 because the bill does more than require small cell facilities on private property. It also requires us to allow small cell facilities on public rights-of-ways. Those fall under Chapter 9, not under Chapter 21, and so I'm simply asking that you look at the zoning provisions for this ordinance. This is not something that we have any choice about. This is something that's required by the state code. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm trying to go through this quickly. The memo contains a lot more details regarding what's in the ordinance. The ordinance as drafted is largely the existing language in the state code.
Questions?
I have a question. Because technology changes as much as it does, the phrase cell for cellular, I wonder if that doesn't need to be broadened to be something perhaps along the line of cellular and similar wireless communication devices.
Well, in this case, we have very specific definitions in the state code, and so those definitions are incorporated within the city code. I can tell you this is not the last action that the General Assembly is going to be asked to take with respect to cellular technology and wireless technology. What they did not take up was structures, so poles either 50 feet or less than 50 feet. Their original proposal in front of the General Assembly included a requirement that those be permitted. That was taken out in the language that was ultimately adopted by the General Assembly, but I've seen a proposed bill, whether it gets submitted or not, I don't know, but I've seen language for a proposed bill for next year. So this is probably not the last you're going to see with wireless.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. I will open the public hearing on PCR 17-023. If there's anyone who would like to address the commission on this issue, please come forward, state your name and your address. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion from Planning Commission, or would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we recommend to City Council approval of PCR 17-023 to amend the zoning ordinance to regulate small cell facilities.
Second.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Schaller?
Aye.
Mr. Clee?
Aye.
Stafford?
Aye.
Ms. Macbeth?
Aye.
Right. So we have one remaining public hearing, PCR-17016, a request of the William & Mary Real Estate Foundation for a special use permit to construct a Jewish student center at 406 and 410 Jamestown Road. As I am an employee of the College of William & Mary, I will be recusing myself from this issue, and I will be passing the gavel. Well, because I can't pass the gavel to you.
Right. I am also at William & Mary, so I will not take the gavel, which means that our second vice chair.
And I will also be recusing myself because of the stipend that I receive from the College of William & Mary.
Now, given this, we don't have a quorum.
We do not have a quorum for purposes of this item, and so Planning Commission is not going to be able to take up the item.
All right, so we'll table this. Can we have a motion to table? Do we need to do that?
Well, problematically, this was the last date on which the Planning Commission could take an action with respect to this, and so I will go back and look at the code, but I think what I'm going to need to advise staff to do is move it forward to City Council.
Not a recommendation from Planning Commission? That makes sense.
Okay.
All right, well then I'll take the gavel back from you.
Are we allowed to ask any questions about this?
Planning Commission is not allowed to act on it without a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, does anybody have anything to add for, we have no old business. Does anyone have anything to add for new business?
Can we take up seems like it would be useful for at least the members of us that can discuss the Hillel Center to convey something to council. I presume we can't do that in the context of new business or
You cannot act
right.
on the matter. Beyond that, what you choose to discuss is up to the Planning Commission.
Right.
Would you like to discuss? That's not acting.
I think it would be useful,
Okay.
since we can't, I think it would be useful for us to convey something to council, even though we can't act, that gives some sense that we of our take on this application, just so they're not completely flying blind. Whether it affects them or not, I don't think matters even so much as that we have said something in the public record. Greg, are you comfortable talking about this at all?
I am.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll just say that I think this is a fine proposal, totally reasonable use of land in this particular district, in much the same way that even having a church in a residential district is. And so, were I able to act on this, I would have voted to approve it. I presume that's not overstepping what.
I think Ms. Shelton would tell you if you were overstepping.
That's true. That's true. So I'll leave it at that. I don't have too much to add to that. I think this is a very reasonable and welcome application.
Yeah, I will say that change is inevitable in this town to a certain degree, and it's a positive change compared to a lot of other things. I think it's a beautiful building, and I think it'll do a lot of good for the community on the campus as well as Williamsburg.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other new business? All right. Anything under other?
I have another, if I can. I just wanted to say I'm George Shield. I was on the consent agenda. We have probably done a couple of hundred built-to-suit projects, places from Massachusetts to Florida, west to Harlingen, Texas, which is real Texas, and then up to Wisconsin. I've had the pleasure of working with professionals around the country. I want to compliment Carolyn and her staff on the fact that this was not, just a slam dunk process. It's definitely a process where details and things matter, which I really appreciate. They helped us navigate this, gave us the proper advice at the right time, things that we should be more considerate of, and provided just a tremendous amount of information and help in getting to the point today where we have a final approval. I want to say that I would be delighted to and encourage all my friends to do business with the Williamsburg Planning Department anytime that comes up.
Thank you very much.
That's why I was hanging around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like the student center idea too.
All right, we have 3 information items: the City Council report, the Planning Department monthly report, and the monthly financial statement. And there are no public hearings scheduled for November 15th. Stay tuned to see what plans are for that meeting. All right, and there are no other comments. I will close the 17th, 2017 Planning Commission.